I want to start with you, Kofi, because Kofi has to leave. Right. So I want to start the IMF discussion from there. I don't know you had the arguments. Government says, well, they're doing great stuff, both in health, in education, but I think it's the economy bit that got people talking more. So they're quoting the World Economic Outlook report, and they say, and this is on the issue of per capita income. Ghana's per capita currently is 1,340, better than Senegal and better than Cote d'Ivoire. They introduced Kenya, there became a problem because obviously on the face of even their own document that was false. Well, what's your take on this?
Well, I'm just going to say that every improvement is worth celebrating, is worth commending, and in that respect, obviously, government should be commended. Every improvement in numbers, every improvement in real livelihood is worth being recognized. And I think that so long as government is condemned for poor performances, government must be celebrated for good performances. I need to hasten to add, however, that globally, development policy has been shifting, if not shifted, from focusing on figures or focusing on abstract figures, particularly from the perspective of GDPs. Mm-hmm. So over the years, countries, especially developing countries that are really concerned about the people, have measured their performances on what has been called the Human Development Index, HDI. Focuses on the real impact on people. Now, this is not to say that these numbers do not necessarily touch on people. For example, per capita. Mm-hmm. Per capita is a human-centric figure because it actually measures the extent to how much money the average person,
it can be very deceptive.
Exactly.
Because if one person earns 5 billion,
exactly.
The average. Those if you show a huge figure, but it doesn't mean that
exactly. Those skewed distortions are also there, and that I'm mindful of. But the most important thing is the focus on the real impact on people. Yeah. And I think that while government must be very happy on the fact that there's some progress being made, I will urge that we should not be distracted. Especially government should not be distracted on the fight to make poverty history, on the fight to make the average person taken care of within the system. I dare say that over the years, I think all of us around this table are matured enough to have met a little bit of the days of safety nets in this country, when poor people were not destitute. They were poor, but not destitute. I think today we have people who are close to that word destitute. And I think that's the problem. Again, this has nothing to do with one government. It's generational. We're speaking of the Fourth Republic. Consistently, our governments have not done as well as they could have done. I'm not going to spend a lot of effort in this area because it's not my area of expertise, not to mention the fact that I would have been happier, but for the fact that I had to leave, to hear the minister's position first, so that we have a certain sense of government position in context. But clearly, we still have a fundamental problem of joblessness in Ghana. Mm-hmm. Clearly, people, the average person still struggles to get a job. And I think that the efforts being put in this area should be commended. The fact that the IMF, an objective, international, reputable body, has made this statement of government should be believed. Again, not to mention the fact that it's important to remember that the IMF, just like the World Bank over the years, have been very concerned or very focused on numbers. They do all this GDP analysis thing. And so, and one thing I've noticed though is that the IMF comments both the NDC and the MPP
when they're about
governments. Yes, I've noticed that. There's a certain diplomatic way of doing things. Not to mention the fact that they are massaging anything. No, I'm not saying that they are massaging anything. The point I'm making to you is there's a certain diplomatic relationship that sometimes gets them not to be overly critical. But in this case, they have not been neutral. They have actually been positive. That look, these figures represent improvement, and therefore, as I said, as a country, we should be happy about them. Not to mention the fact that we should not ignore them. I would just want to make a point or two about the education component, because I'm sure you know that a part of me is in the area, and for me, that is something that concerns me. Not to speak of the fact that they are saying we're improving, but to speak of the bigger picture, that Ghana has a fundamental educational problem, and I worry about the IMF making these comments that may create distortions. Our education continues, in my opinion, to slump. I saw improvement, but our education is slumping, especially at the tertiary level. How do we speak of education slumping? We're speaking of this in the context of the fact that our education is skewed in the wrong direction. We continue to train people how to remember and not how to be creative. Our education is therefore retentive-oriented as opposed to creative. We still have a huge problem of curricular development. The things we're teaching today, how competitive are the products of the Ghanaian educational system? There's a mismatch between input and output. What is the content? How much investment are we making in education? Teacher training, capacity building, materials and resources that have to be used at the educational level, from the very high level to the low level. Our own global competitiveness. How is the Ghanaian graduate, how competitive globally is he? There's a mismatch between industrial expectation or commerce expectation and the people we train from schools. All these considerations makes me surprised to actually see that a statement that says that our education is improving. In which direction? Now, this is not meant to, to be attached to any government at all. It is just a major policy failure. And again, we all saw the NPP, NDC tango when the SSS thing came, 3 years, 4 years, 2 years, 3 years. We're not sure which one we even had. What is the focus? What is the vision? What is the philosophy? What should a Ghanaian graduate, SHS graduate, look like? And assuming he has no further education, what can he fit? What can he do? Yeah. How would he fit in the industrial scheme of things, among others? So, because of time, I'm just going to, limit my comments here. If you ask me any further question, I'll answer. But in respect to that, I'm just going to say that, as I said, every improvement is worth celebrating, and therefore I celebrate this, and therefore I commend government in this respect, and I commend governments who have all contributed to this. Moving forward, however, I still think it's a minimal achievement. I think we should be measured in our celebration. We should focus on the bigger work that remains undone, and to ensure that we actually achieve this. Numbers, particularly in the area of GDP, among others, are not things that specifically excite me, because we have been on the upward progression for some time. But we can still see that it is just too little movement for purposes of, pulling and bringing out of poverty the mass number of people who are actually stuck in that bracket.
Thank you very much, Kofi. And Kofi Abuchi will take leave of us. We're grateful that you joined us. Thank you for that. And the Minister will respond to some of the things. I want to come to you at the tail end, because the statement was yours, and this week you had to deal with it. So I want to hear around the table that you could deal with the issues. And let me bring you in, Honorable Sir Mensah. You read the statement?
Yes. I've not read the whole document, IMF document, but I've read some documents, especially the one from the minister.
Yeah.
That is Dr.
Impressed? Impressed with what you find?
First of all, let me say that as a Ghanaian, if there's the slightest level of improvement, I'm happy. Because at the international arena, when you go and there's anything negative about your country, so the way you are looked at is different. When there's significant improvement too, in fact, you are hailed. So as a Ghanaian, yes. But the issue is it significant or is it marginal? It's a very marginal level of improvement. First of all,
in fact, one professor, Professor Peter Korte, this week said that government, well, we should stop making noise.
Yes.
About this marginal, and avoid the temptation, in his words, to abuse statistics.
Yeah, exactly. And then to go to analysis of the GDP per capita itself, an improvement of about $74
over 8 years.
Yes, it's nothing that we must rejoice about. The reason why I'm saying this, the increase has mainly been from the oil sector, the petroleum and gas sector. The point of reference, which is 2008, we didn't have oil forming part of our GDP, forming part of the economy. Investment in oil is very significant. So from 2010, the injection of investments into the oil sector brought huge level of expenditure, which is also calculated as part of the GDP.
True.
And with that high level of injection, definitely it will rise or it will increase the per capita, since it will affect the general level of the gross domestic product. And that is what we are seeing. But I wish the government would be a bit cautious in using this as a major achievement. Because if you take the oil sector, irrespective of the huge level of investment, that can increase the level of GDP and as a result increase the level of income per capita. When it comes to job creation, the capacity to create job is minimal. The oil sector cannot even engage beyond 2% of our working populace. So whilst we are rejoicing at this level, the people down there are suffering because it's dwindling the income and employment generation sectors. So the country's capacity to generate employment is also diminishing. Let's take our GDP growth rate for last year, about 3.5. Out of the 3.5%, almost 1/3 is from oil, the oil sector. So if you have an economy where a sector that is contributing less than 2% of employment generation is giving you 1/3 of the growth rate, then you know the danger you have. What that it implies that the other sectors like agric that have the capacity to generate more employment and then revenue are being overcrowded. And when they are crowded out, then employment generation is also being crowded out. Because those sectors are not expanding as they should. And it shows why, if we take agri for instance, the growth rate of 7.4% in 2008 came down to 0.04. Now we are told there's a revised figure of 2.4%. So whilst these sectors, some of them are industry, etc., even grew, some are growing negative percentages. And if you have negative percentages, the simple analysis or analogy you can draw from is that these sectors are growing at a very fast diminishing rate. They are not expanding as they should. And if they are not expanding at that rate, a higher rate, then you are not creating the job. That is why we are having higher level of unemployment. So even though you might say that, fine, we have an increase in GDP, but it's not translating into the life of the people. Next one, the comparison with Senegal and then La Côte d'Ivoire.
And of course, Kenya.
Kenya, I think they've come to correct them, so I don't want to go there. You know, I agree that we have per capita income which is higher than that of Côte d'Ivoire. But we should not forget about the fact that, one, Ghana has always been the second largest economy in West Africa after Nigeria. We've always been the largest economy.
When largest means
in terms of the size of the economy, GDP,
and the activity.
And this has always translated also into the per capita. What they fail to recognize is that currently La Côte d'Ivoire is doing far better than us, in the sense that most of the economic fundamentals, they've had it right as compared to Ghana. If you talk about Ghana now, our inflation is above 19%. If you go to Côte d'Ivoire, it's just 2.1%. If you talk about debt to GDP ratio, Côte d'Ivoire is just about 2.3%. Ours is high up there. If you consider interest rates, they have between 3.5 up to about 10%. Ours is now around 35%. Do you get my point? So even though I agree we have a per capita income which is higher than that of Côte d'Ivoire, they are doing far better than us now. The economic performance is far better than us. Even comparing the fact that they went into war some 10 years back. Some few years, not even up to 10 years. They went to war about 10 years, but just about 5 years back that they came out of the war. And if this is the level of their performance, my brother, then we cannot rejoice on this marginal increase in per capita income. So I think the government should stop rejoicing and saying we've achieved this, we have achieved that. And then even the IMF report itself goes further to say that the performance will be better in 2017. Yeah. You see? What are we seeing today? What were the basis of saying is going to be improved in 2017? And assuming even it will improve, what do we stand on today to get to that 2017? Are we saying in 2017 our interest will come down to maybe a single digit? They should have explained these things. They should have explained the basis of even saying that we are heading towards this direction and that there will be improvement. I did not see any major explanation in terms of economic.
So you're skeptical about the projections?
Exactly.
Okay.
But they made a general statement.
Because you know that the government is already has a program with the IMF that expires, a million ton, that expires in 2017. So the thinking there is once you've implemented all those so-called home growth strategies over that period, at 2017, you should be start seeing the results of those policies.
That even makes it more worrying.
Why?
When the tutor who is teaching a student comes out to say the student will have this mark at the end of the day, do you think the teacher will come and say this student is going to fail? If the teacher says the student is going to fail, it's an indictment on the teacher.
Okay, so you're saying that IMF is protecting themselves?
Why not?
Okay.
Why not? You see, because
I want to take a break because we have a few minutes to wrap up. I want Kweku and Felix to have their say very quickly. We'll take a short break right now, final break. When we come, Kweku and Felix will wrap it up for us. Thank you for staying with us here on Newsfile. We're still talking about the economy and the statement from government this week, pointing to achievements, significant progress made in key areas of the economy, education, health, etc. And just whilst we're on break, we had a discussion about how important the subject is. And Kweku says, well, you want to defer to the minister to use the last 4 minutes or so to sort of lay the foundation. Next week, this is a timeless conversation. We'll return to it and make it a bit more significant as part of the conversation so we can explore the many aspects of it. And so a lot has been said from Kofi Abochi and then Honorable. What's your take on the suggestions that this is really nothing?
It's not
to celebrate.
It is really unfortunate that we are out of time.
Sure.
But the facts speak for themselves. The progress we've made in education, in health, and other social services cannot be said to be nothing. They are significant. Take the education sector for instance. In the last 8 years, scope has been provided for an additional 2 million Ghanaian children to access education, in addition to what existed. If you go to the area of health, access to health is improving. We have done work that is ensuring the addition of about 6,000 hospital beds. It doesn't mean that we are going to buy beds and put it there, but hospitals that make it possible for people who didn't have access to healthcare in the past to have access to it. Take water, electricity, roads, transportation, communications. Anybody who says that the progress we've made is not significant is not being fair to the facts. On economic growth, you see, you can only compare yourself to your peers, because we live within a certain sub-region. And therefore, the only way that you determine progress, apart from the real improvements in the lives of your own people, is what is happening elsewhere. And the fact is that if you take all the reports, Human Development Index, and all the other reports that we've alluded to, Ghana is way above its peers.
To the specifics, though, they say $74 per capita.
But again, you need also to check the growth that we've had. In the last 8 years, the average growth rate has been about 7%. In the 8 years preceding that, it was less than 6%. That is significant growth. Why? They speak about Côte d'Ivoire. Are you aware, for instance, that in all 8 years that the NPP was in power, inflation in Côte d'Ivoire was lower than Ghana? Yet they create the impression that it is a new phenomenon, and it is because we have done something wrong. They speak about cocoa, for instance. In all 8 years that they were in power, Côte d'Ivoire was the world's leading producer of cocoa. In fact, we lost our second position as a second highest cocoa producer to Indonesia in 2006. And yet they heap blame on government as though we've done something wrong. Look at the Human Development Report. We are classified as a medium development country, higher than Nigeria, Kenya, and Senegal, and Côte d'Ivoire. So these are gains that must be recognized. And the tendency to dismiss them and think that nothing has happened over the period is unfair. Even in the economy, there have been massive improvements. Okay, there are long-standing issues like interest rates. But truth be told, interest rates have always been high. It is not like it was very low and we took it up. There are problems that go beyond just fiscal or monetary policy that account for interest rate that we need to address as a nation. But the discussion ought to be fair to the facts, so that we don't create the impression that nothing has happened in the period that we are talking. Look at water production, for instance, water provision.
I don't think anybody has said nothing.
We came to power.
The thinking is that it's too small to.
It is not true. We came to power to meet water provision at 58.5%. That is almost half of our citizens didn't have access to water. Currently, it stands at about 80%. How can anybody say that this is not progress? You have a situation where the entire public health sector had a total of 11,600 beds. Today, we are making progress such that an additional 6,000 beds is being added, more than half of what existed in 57 years of nationhood. And somebody says it is not significant progress. Today, look at gender parity. We've almost bridged the gap. Completion rates have gone up. Access to teaching aids have improved. Okay. So nobody can say that we've not made progress. The time is too limited.
So what will happen is this is such a wide and important issue. We have education in there, we have health in there, there's of course a big issue of the economy, jobs in there, that timeless conversations that we'll have next week if you join us on the next episode of Newsfile. Well, it's just a few seconds to the top of the hour midday, and it's been good having you for company for the past 3 hours. My guests in the studio had been Abdul Malik Kwekubaku, editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Kofi Abochi, Dean, Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, GIMPA, was here earlier. Felix Kwachifusi, the Deputy Minister of Communications, and Simon Osei Mensah MP, Bosomchi Constituency, and Deputy Speaker, Ekwas Parliament. My name is Evans Mens. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll catch you again next week when something will be in the hot seat.